The rain had just stopped over rural Texas when the evening sun broke through dark clouds, casting golden light across acres of twisted metal, rusted vehicles, and forgotten machinery. The junkyard looked like a graveyard for broken dreams. Bent fenders reflected orange sunlight. Empty windows stared into nothing. Wind whistled through rows of abandoned trucks. Most people saw trash. Ryan Carter saw survival. Standing beside him was his 11-year-old daughter Sophie, her small hand wrapped tightly around his rough fingers. "Dad," she whispered, staring across the enormous property. "Are we really buying this place?" Ryan swallowed hard. The bank account on his phone showed less than $400 remaining. "Yes." Sophie looked nervous. "So now we're officially broke." Despite everything, Ryan laughed. "Officially. Have you ever stood at the edge of a decision so frightening that turning back felt safer than moving forward?" 2 years earlier, Ryan had owned a successful auto repair business. Then his wife Emily was diagnosed with cancer. Medical bills arrived faster than income. Savings vanished. The business collapsed. The house was sold. And 6 months later, Emily was gone. Since then, Ryan and Sophie had been living in a tiny rented trailer while he worked construction jobs during the day and repaired engines at night. Life became a series of sacrifices. But when an aging junkyard owner offered to sell this property at a desperate discount, Ryan couldn't stop thinking about it. Maybe because he understood broken things. Across the property, several luxury SUVs rolled through the gates. Out stepped Victoria Lang, CEO of Lang Motors, one of the largest automotive corporations in America. Elegant, confident, feared, Victoria had come only because her company planned to buy nearby land. She noticed Ryan immediately. Then she noticed the paperwork in his hands. "You bought this place?" Ryan nodded. "Yes." Victoria glanced around at mountains of scrap metal and laughed softly. "You paid money for this." The executives behind her smirked. One pointed toward a rusted school bus missing half its roof. Another toward collapsed storage buildings. Victoria shook her head. "This junkyard is trash." The words hung heavily in the air. Sophie lowered her eyes instantly. Ryan felt his stomach tighten. Not because Victoria insulted him. Because his daughter heard it. Again, another person telling them they weren't enough. "What do you plan to do with it?" Victoria asked. Ryan looked across the property. Rows of abandoned vehicles stretched toward the horizon. Forgotten, ignored, written off. "Build something." The executives exchanged amused looks. "Out of garbage." Ryan smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's where the best things come from." Victoria's expression hardened. "Dreams don't create businesses." Ryan met her eyes calmly. "No." He looked around the junkyard. "People do." For a brief second, neither looked away. Then Victoria shrugged. "Good luck." The SUVs disappeared through the gate moments later. Leaving dust behind. Leaving silence behind. Leaving doubt behind. That night, Ryan sat on an overturned tire while Sophie ate takeout noodles beneath an old warehouse light. The junkyard felt enormous, overwhelming, impossible. "What if she's right?" Sophie asked quietly. Ryan stared toward the darkness. Rows of forgotten vehicles disappeared into the night. Then he looked at his daughter. "Do you remember what Mom used to say?" Sophie smiled sadly. "About broken things." Ryan nodded. "She said value doesn't disappear just because someone can't see it." The wind moved softly through the yard. Somewhere nearby, loose metal rattled gently. For the first time since Emily died, Ryan felt something dangerous growing inside him. Hope. And sometimes hope is the scariest thing of all. Because losing it hurts. But 30 days later, the woman who called his junkyard trash would drive through those gates again. And everything she believed about value would change forever. 30 days later, the Texas sun rose over a place that barely resembled the junkyard Victoria Lang remembered. The rusted entrance gate had been repaired and painted. The broken warehouse now carried a fresh sign that read "Carter Reclaimed Auto Parts." Trucks moved in and out of the property from sunrise until evening. Ryan barely slept anymore. Every day started before dawn. Every night ended long after Sophie fell asleep. Together they sorted usable parts, repaired engines, restored salvageable vehicles, and sold rare components online. Ryan discovered that collectors across the country were willing to pay thousands of dollars for parts hidden among the scrap everyone else ignored. What would you do if the opportunity everyone mocked turned out to be the doorway to your future? One afternoon, Sophie ran across the yard holding a tablet. "Dad." Ryan looked up from an old pickup truck. "What happened?" "We got another order." "How much?" Her eyes widened. $22,000. For a moment, neither moved. Then Ryan sat down heavily on a toolbox. Not because of the money. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't wondering how they would survive next month. Tears filled his eyes before he could stop them. Sophie wrapped her arms around him instantly. "You did it." Ryan shook his head. "No." His voice cracked. "We did it." By the end of the month, the junkyard had generated more revenue than his old repair shop ever had. Local mechanics partnered with him. Collectors traveled from different states. Even investors started calling. Then one morning, a familiar convoy of black SUVs rolled through the gates. Victoria Lang stepped out slowly. This time nobody laughed. She looked around in stunned silence. Employees worked throughout the property. Customers examined inventory. Forklifts moved valuable materials. What she once saw as garbage had become a thriving business. Ryan walked toward her calmly. "Good morning." Victoria glanced across the yard. "I don't understand." Ryan smiled. Most people didn't. They walked between rows of organized inventory. Victoria stopped repeatedly to inspect restored parts and specialty vehicles. "How much is this place worth now?" Ryan hesitated. "Last offer was $3.8 million. Victoria froze. 30 days earlier, she had called it trash. Now it was worth millions. Have you ever realized your assumptions blinded you to something extraordinary? Near the back of the property, they reached an old red truck Ryan had restored personally. Victoria noticed a photograph taped inside the cab. A smiling woman. "Emily, your wife." Ryan nodded quietly. The air felt different suddenly. Softer. More personal. "She believed in this place before I did." Victoria studied the photograph. What happened to her? The question reopened an old wound. But Ryan answered anyway. "Cancer." For several seconds, only the wind moved. Then Victoria spoke quietly. "My father died when I was 20. Ryan looked surprised. "I didn't know. Most people don't." She stared toward the horizon. "I spent my entire life proving weakness couldn't touch me again." For the first time, she didn't sound like a CEO. She sounded human. Just another person carrying old pain. Just another person trying to outrun grief. Sophie approached carrying 3 cold lemonades. She handed one to Victoria without hesitation. The CEO smiled. "Thank you. Dad says everyone deserves a second chance." Victoria looked toward Ryan. The words landed harder than she expected. Because Ryan had every reason to resent her. Instead, he offered kindness. The same kindness life rarely gives. Late that afternoon, Victoria prepared to leave. Before reaching her vehicle, she turned back. "I was wrong." Ryan remained silent. "I saw junk." Her eyes moved across the thriving property. "You saw potential." Ryan glanced toward Sophie laughing with employees nearby. Then toward Emily's photograph inside the truck. Finally he spoke. "Sometimes the world labels things worthless because it only looks at the surface." Victoria nodded slowly. "And people?" Ryan smiled softly. "People too." As the SUVs disappeared down the dusty road, sunlight stretched across the transformed junkyard. The same land, the same scrap, the same broken vehicles. Only one thing had changed. Someone believed they were worth saving. Standing beside his daughter beneath the golden Texas sky, Ryan finally understood what Emily had tried to teach him all those years. Value isn't determined by appearance. Potential isn't destroyed by hardship. And the people most often overlooked by the world sometimes carry the greatest treasures within them. The junkyard had become a fortune. But the real victory was discovering that broken things, and broken people, can still build something beautiful when someone refuses to give up on them.